Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they might have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. Finally, if you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Friday on YouTube, so subscribe to @IEN Magazine and get a notification whenever we go live, like we are now. Anna, how you doing this week?
Doing great, thanks.
Jeff?
I'm good. Plain a little hurt. But I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah,
I think hopefully I can stand the entire podcast.
Yeah, take it easy, man. You don't need to.
You got a wife and kids to think about.
Jeff took a hard one in softball, and I was just like, I felt bad because I was like, I hope you're fine. Ooh, we have to stand a lot in the day.
Yeah, I did finish the game. Mm-hmm. This is an old man injury. I hurt myself running from the base. So let's we'll just leave it at that. And but yeah, it's getting better.
I liked your response when I was like, "Are you okay?" You're like, "Oh, I know what I'm dealing with." Like, all right. Well, before we get started with our first story this week, we have a word from our sponsor.
The most exciting and anticipated segment of the year is coming.
That's right. In September, we'll unveil the results of our 2022 Big 50 list of industrial distributors.
Our annual list ranks the top 50 industrial distributors by revenue and includes some information on the business strategies of these top companies.
In addition to this segment in our print magazine, we'll also reveal this year's ranking in our 3-part video countdown.
From September 27th to September 29th, we'll unveil this year's Big 50 companies with added commentary and analysis from our team and other industry experts.
We're super excited, and we hope you're excited too. Please join us for this year's Big 50.
You won't want to miss this.
We're back. And to learn a little bit more about our sponsor, the Industrial Distribution Big 50 list, here's Anna Wells.
With the first time you are ever hearing this, Industrial Distribution's Big 50 list is an annual ranking of the top 50 industrial distributors by sales revenue. This hotly anticipated list will be unveiled starting September 27th, which is so soon, when we go live with our countdown video series. We're going to walk through the Big 50 from 50 to 1 over the course of 3 videos in 3 days. Check them out on our website, inddist.com, indist.com, and you'll get to see the ranking, complete with a lot of great industry analysis to go along with it.
So, indist.com on Monday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday the 27th is when we start. That's when we'll reveal 50 through 31.
Okay.
And then go from there. So.
Okay. Is it like a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing? Or
yep, that's exactly what it is. It's
okay.
A Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday thing.
Okay. I didn't know if it was like weekly. If it's like every Tuesday, tune in for the next segment. You know, really string it out.
Yeah, we could have done it that way. We could have done it like every 6 weeks we unveil a new company and then just milk the Big 50 for like 3 years. But we didn't do that.
Yeah, one day.
We could have.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Excellent. Well, our first story this week. 7 states back hydrogen as clean energy source. The Midwest is teaming up to accelerate hydrogen as a clean energy alternative for cars and factories that are still dependent on fossil fuels. Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin have economies dominated by agriculture and heavy industry. There it is. Hydrogen, the colorless, odorless gas, already powers some cars, buses, trucks, and trains. However, limited fueling stations has stifled appeal and growth. Some are skeptical because most hydrogen in the U.S. comes from natural gas, but it can be created by using electric currents from wind, solar, and other means that produce, quote, clean hydrogen that have only water as a byproduct when used in a fuel cell. The federal infrastructure law earmarked $8 billion to fund regional hubs that would step up clean hydrogen production and distribution. The Midwestern Hydrogen Coalition hasn't said if it will pursue federal funding. The partnership will instead focus on boosting development, markets, supply chains, and a workforce for clean hydrogen. Jeff, every time it feels like we've moved beyond hydrogen. It seems to come back in a bigger and bigger way.
It's just the Godfather thing. Every time you think you're out, pull you back in.
It is.
There's kind of a lot to unpack here. We haven't really talked a ton about hydrogen, even as a power source, especially in transportation. It seems like for 10 years, okay, since it's really gotten there. And I'm going to put the infrastructure stuff aside from a little bit. That's obviously very important. But one of the things that this made me go back to is whether it's electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel cells, whatever the case is, it goes back to the source and how we're producing this power source, okay, in terms of how it's produced and manufactured, because that's where we're having a lot of issues in terms of reducing the actual carbon footprint and doing the right thing. When it comes to the automotive side, if you're looking at electric vehicles, you're looking at mining rare earth elements, which is not great for the environment. The production process in producing those electric batteries, also very energy intensive. We still get 75 to 80% of the power from our grid comes from fossil fuels. So the renewables aren't there yet. If we really want to transition, whether it is electric fuel cells or hydrogen fuel cells, which also have extremely energy intensive production processes, it needs to go back to the source of where we're getting the power from or the energy from for the production process. So we need more renewable energy sources, or a bigger portion of our energy coming from solar, wind, geothermal, whatever the case is. That's how we're really going to get there. The one thing that's interesting with hydrogen is we do have an area where it's being used very prominently and very successfully, and that's with fork trucks. There's over 25,000 fork trucks in the U.S. right now that use hydrogen as their fuel source. They found a good application for it. It is better for the environment in terms of the emissions that are being avoided versus a gas-powered option. It's more robust than an electric forklift right now, according to the people that are using it. So there is options here. I see John is chiming in here, John Dearden. He actually sent us all a pretty interesting video talking about some of the comparisons between the production processes of electric versus hybrids versus conventional vehicles and some of the problems there too. So there is a lot to unpack here and a lot we could talk about when it comes to these hydrogen fuel cells. That's really interesting. The thing that I still always think about, and I think why we've only seen really 2 automakers really go in this direction and even produce hydrogen models, is because a lot of the safety concerns. Hydrogen is extremely combustible. When you combine that with an electric fuel cell, there's a lot of potential safety concerns there when you're looking at vehicles moving as fast as they are. The other area of application they're looking at here is just for like generators and industrial power sources, which I think is worth investigating and looking at if, again, we can get to more energy for the grid being produced through renewable sources.
Who's the other automaker? I know that Toyota, it was like maybe 2-3 months ago, where they made the big pivot away from hydrogen to EV. Do you know who the other automaker was?
It's Hyundai.
Hyundai, okay.
They both have vehicles. Interestingly enough, for what it's worth, I think they're only available in the U.S. in California. That's the only place these hydrogen models are available. There's some other stuff too we can talk about a little bit.
Okay. Anna, what were your thoughts on sort of the 7 Midwestern states that stepped up and said, hey, we want the free money too?
Yeah, it's interesting because, you guys started to kind of touch on the automaker side of it, and I think that's a really important element to focus on because obviously the states are talking about infrastructure and, maybe coming out in support of manufacturing, but there's not a lot of automakers that are making hydrogen cars. So what's happening there? You mentioned Toyota, and I want to talk about Toyota a little bit. Toyota, as we know, has put a lot of R&D into hydrogen, and they've kind of had to engage in a weird balancing act lately where the development of electrics has been decidedly prioritized in this market. Toyota, who had the most successful hybrid electric vehicle ever, the Prius, actually found itself late to the market on fully electric vehicles, and that's because it was so focused on hydrogen. And it did look like they were maybe going to have to pivot, at least in the U.S. market, until this legislation, I think, maybe provided a little bit of a boost for them by providing these billions for hydrogen development. In August, Toyota and BMW actually announced that the 2 automakers were going to work together to plan to be mass producing and selling fuel cell EVs together as early as 2025. Not a lot of, you mentioned Hyundai, but nobody else really is in this space, right? There's a reason it's appealing. Clean hydrogen is appealing. It actually has a charging speed advantage on electrics, and it can reportedly operate more efficiently in cold weather, which is...
That'd be huge.
Yeah, I
Makes
mean,
sense with the Midwestern states too.
yeah, exactly, and looking at how, like, what a large swath of the U.S. is going to be contending with winters, and the batteries on EVs, I think, kind of they go down and charge like a little bit faster in that kind of weather. But I think Jeff makes some solid points around safety, and I don't know if it's the reality. I think like explosions and things like that are rare, again, just like with EVs, but.
You'll still need that shovel, so you have to bury it.
Well, or like the perception, the perception, people have this perception of hydrogen explosions and stuff like that. That could be a bigger barrier than people are believing at this point, whether someone's actually going to get in that vehicle or not. Not to mention, like, battery electrics have so much better infrastructure. Like, infrastructure is a problem for pure EVs already, right? Mm-hmm. And they are way ahead on that compared to what's going on with hydrogen. So it's like you almost have the same chicken versus the egg scenario that electric battled with for so many years, and it's really still battling. I just think there's like a lot of work to do here, and I hope I'm proven wrong, because I do think spreading out our risk and not putting all of our eggs in one basket is a good thing. I would like to see maybe some multiple options moving forward, and maybe states, aligning together and then leveraging the federal government if they do, which I assume they will.
Yeah.
On this
they're
project.
Not sure if they're going to tap into that $8 billion.
Yeah,
they'll look into it.
Yeah, we'll think about it. We have a lot of other resources.
Yeah.
We always like to pay our own bills, right?
Right, exactly. Maybe this will help, but again, there's a lot of work to do.
I think Mark Waterman, who's watching us live, and John Dearden were both giving us some explosion puns with the not so good for airships and more boom for your buck with hydrogen. I found it interesting that the partnership is actually going to take advantage of the region's pipelines and tanks for distributing and storing ammonia, which consists largely of hydrogen as a key ingredient in fertilizer. There's a lot of that in the Midwest. I agree with you, Anna, that because at first I read it and it seemed like, all right, we've already collectively decided to move on from hydrogen, but maybe we shouldn't.
Right. No, I agree.
Jeff, did you have something else to add about possibly fleets that could use it?
I think so. Volvo is another one that is actually looking at semis, trucks, which you could also see just the dynamics in terms of how it burns, how it's used, all that. That could be another potential application. I agree with you guys. It's worth the continued investigation and looking at. What it feels like, though, is because you've only got 2 models from 2 or 3 automakers out there now, the automotive industry has kind of moved past it.
Yeah.
They seem like they have chosen to go the electrical route, and it seems like a lot of the infrastructure, even though we're talking about hydrogen here, getting some of those billions of dollars in in government support, everybody's moving towards that EV route. So I think the applications here, even though automotive or transportation is the sexier one and it gets more headlines, I think there's more applications on a more stationary energy source potentially with hydrogen. The problem there is, again, when you talk about how do you get it to that source, you're looking at some sort of transport, whether it's a pipeline or a vehicle.
Right.
And then you're looking at other carbon emissions popping up, and how does that all balance out? So it's a lot to look at.
All right, our next most popular story this week, the industries that still use floppy disks. Many people believe that the 3.5-inch floppy disk died long ago, but major industries still rely on the little plastic squares to move data around. Eye on Design magazine recently spoke with floppydisk.com founder Tom Persky, who calls himself, quote, the last man standing in the floppy disk business. The new father of floppies says he still sells many disks to consumers, but his biggest customers are industrial users. Airlines also use floppy disks in legacy avionics, and some medical equipment still requires the tech to extract patient and research data. The biggest industry still in the disk business? Embroidery. Thousands of machines need floppy disks to run. Anna, did you ever believe that so many floppy disks were still out in the market and in some pretty mission-critical equipment?
I really didn't, but the more I read into this topic, the more I guess it makes sense a little bit. So, and if you look at the manufacturing industry, the industry is so hard to evaluate because it kind of straddles the line between new and old technology. Like for every cutting edge manufacturer that's using the latest digital tools on their plant floor, there's one like literally next door to it that's still using Excel spreadsheets for purchasing and budgeting, and you know, all their maintenance practices are in a notebook in somebody's back pocket. So I think, and you see a lot of companies that are like, this is how we've always done it, right? So that's why they don't transition away. I think in the case of this, like especially the embroidery manufacturers that you mentioned, their equipment actually requires these discs, and they're using capital equipment that was built to last for like 50 years. So I think it makes sense then that they're still using this. You know how manufacturers want to hold on to that legacy production equipment. But
it still works.
It still works. Yeah, it's expensive.
And it's embroidery. That not a lot has come along to disrupt the embroidery business.
Oh, really?
Embroidery is still embroidery.
Mostly flowers.
Yeah.
Yep.
I like a good chick.
Yeah,
duckling.
But duckling would be nice. Yeah,
it's adorable.
I read another interview that was a little bit older in Digital Trends with this Mr. Persky of floppydisk.com, and he made it sound like it was almost a happy accident that he was still in this business. He was quoted as saying, I just forgot to get out of the floppy disk business. Like he was selling CDs and stuff, and then he just sort of had this as a small vertical, I think, within his overall business, but then it started to come back. And so that's interesting to me. You know, you think about the missed opportunity that probably occurred in, you know, industries like vinyl, for example, that had a resurgence later and everybody got out of that market. Now there's this big demand, not enough supply to meet that market. So there is an opportunity in kind of being that last man standing in a market, but is it a good business practice? I don't know. To just sort of wait around in that dying market to see if maybe you could be that last one that has, you know, all these contracts relying on it. And then to boot, it makes me wonder, too, how easily he could have abandoned this category and then leave these customers sort of high and dry. And you wonder, I mean, Department of Defense applications, aviation applications, sort of scary to think, like, what would have happened? Are they defending against this possibility? I don't know. You know.
Well, and it was he does mention in that one article that many of these companies are still living off of inventory that, you know, are 5 and 10 years old, and they just kind of purchased everything. No, I think that for every Tom Persky success story, you know, you have 100 others that have warehouses full of Beanie Babies waiting for the resurgence.
There's that little shoe repair shop on the end of your street that it's like, what are you still doing there?
Yeah, just you know, or they still had not the 3.5, but what was the bigger one? The 8-inch floppy.
Because that's when I first saw this headline. Yeah. I thought that's what we were talking about.
Oh, okay.
Did you guys have to use those, or am I dating myself?
The big ones, yeah.
Yeah, I used them in grade school to play like number munchers.
No, I think I can remember the first time I saw those 8-inch floppy discs was like print shop, so you could design a flyer. Or something.
Yeah.
Are we not talking about those?
The majority of what
3.5.
Okay.
3.5. Yeah. Okay.
Which. Still.
Yeah.
It's pretty, and I think, you know, Anna touched on it. I think it really speaks to the robustness of a lot of this equipment, that it was initially stored on these disks, and now in order to fix something on it, you still need to revert back to those original specs or blueprints or whatever that data is. So it's interesting. I thought it was also cool in the article, and this guy is kind of cool. He is very humble and sort of realizes he kind of fell into something here a little bit.
For sure.
I mean, it was even the URL. Right? He wasn't going to buy the URL floppydisks.com, and his wife's like, no, just buy it.
It was $250, and he was like...
So it's a cool article. And one thing, too, I thought was interesting when he talked about the manufacturing process. Yeah. Right now, you know, he's talking, it's pretty simple to create a CD or something, but for these discs, especially the plastic ones, you need a mold, you need the tape, you need all this other stuff. So it's like 4 different processes in order to make them. Yeah. So he doesn't have to worry about people getting in there and competing with him at some point. He also mentioned sort of a limited amount of inventory. So when that runs out, you kind of wonder what does happen with a lot of this. We talked about the resurgence there. Like he talked about vinyl records and all that. The one thing you could see, if they could somehow expand the amount of data you could hold on one of these disks, you almost could see it coming back because of all these cybersecurity concerns. Oh, yeah. I mean, this is pretty secure. I mean, you've got it on you, you take it with you, you lock it up. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We were just talking in security breach about all these network cloud attacks. People are putting a lot of proprietary data, financial data in the cloud network. People are starting to target that and hack that with phishing schemes. So, this is kind of like a Mission Impossible plot here to recover the disk, but outside of those types of situations, it is pretty safe.
No, I thought that too, that with all of the cybersecurity issues that are currently happening, I mean, it might make sense for people to go back to more of an analog technology that is a little bit easier to secure. You don't have to worry about somebody bringing in a rogue jump drive and throwing it on a network computer and all of a sudden everything being vulnerable. I mean, and you guys covered some of these points, but I pulled out the big chunks out of the interview because I loved everything about this. And it was, do you still have the sleeves of 3.5 floppy disks in your basement somewhere? I know that I have.
No.
Like all of my college and grade school papers and like little games and programs that I wrote through college.
You had like a Rolodex kind of thing, a little disc holder. And
you just kind of like leaf through them or whatever. Like green was English, red was math. And I still have the last tower that took floppy disks because you need to read them somehow. And when we were doing spring cleaning, Carrie asked me if I wanted to throw them away. Well, I'm like, if I throw those away, then I got to throw away the computer. But I'm going to keep the computer, so I might as well keep the floppy disk. Just makes sense. I need to know when I can go to my Shakespeare 300 level thesis
and read it again.
For my kids.
And just find.
I have an external floppy drive if you ever need it.
Oh.
Producer Eric has an external floppy drive if I ever need it, but I still need to hold on to those computers, Carrie, just in case the external floppy drive goes down.
I want to know what kind of hackneyed writing you put out in college. Bring them in. Read these papers.
Gonna blow your mind. I wrote this great poem about skydiving once, and it had different tone.
Bring it in.
Than I imagined about my relationship with that skydive instructor. Tom Persky said that imagine it's 1990 and you're building an industrial machine and it's of any kind or another. You design it to last 50 years and you want to use the best technology available. That was the 3.5-inch floppy disk. And we talked about vinyl. Jeff, you mentioned a little bit about the manufacturing process. A floppy disk has 9 unique components. And unlike vinyl, where a manufacturing process, you kind of just put the material in, it presses it, and it comes back out. This has, Persky said that you can do 85% of the manufacturing process, and you're still only halfway towards a floppy disk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there's the plastic molding, something called the cookie, which really intrigues me, a shutter, a spring, other components. You need all the pieces for a complete product. If you're missing anything, you're out of luck. And the amount of effort that it would take to recreate a manufacturing line for all the pieces that go into a floppy would be virtually impossible. So why would a company spend $25 million to tool up a factory to see if it can manufacture a floppy disk that nobody has made in 25 years? I think that our entire listeners, like group of listeners and viewers, should take that as a challenge.
Oh.
Can you do it for less than $25 million? Persky could use a competitor. No.
Use 3D printing to create floppy disks. There you go.
There you go.
I mean,
the ultimate,
that someone had to have done that. So. All right. Our next most popular story. I will bring in at least the floppy with all the poetry on it. I'm sure that.
Even.
Yeah.
Whoa.
My working checkbook.
How many poems is an ode to PB and whatever?
Oh, I mean, there's a good peanut butter poem in there every once in a while. You know, sometimes you just got to keep it easy.
I cannot wait to read your poetry.
It is not sunny.
Good?
No. Most of it's still on my MySpace page. That's how you got discovered in the 90s. It didn't work out. Our next most popular story, Northrop Grumman to unveil the B-21 Raider. Northrop Grumman and the U.S. Air Force will unveil the B-21 Raider during the first week of December at the company's Palmdale, California facility. The B-21 is called, quote, the most advanced military aircraft ever built. Since the company won the contract in 2015, Northrop Grumman has assembled a nationwide team to design, test, and build the world's most advanced strike aircraft. 6 B-21 test aircraft are in various stages of final assembly in California. The B-21's first flight is projected for 2023, depending, Jeff, on how the ground tests go. They didn't show us a lot with this one, Jeff, but your thoughts on what's underneath that giant sheet.
Well, hopefully it is something that scares the crap out of Russia and China, because I think that's really what happened here. I think we saw an escalated timeline in response to a lot of things that are just going on right now. One of which is China reportedly being able to see the B-2 right now, the current stealth bomber that we have in place. They've got something called their IRST, which is infrared search and track scanning radar, that is able to pick up this B-2 bomber that before was supposedly stealth, and now they can find it. So hopefully this one is not. It's supposed to be completely stealth. A ton of new technology, obviously, in it. 203 billion per. I hope they can find it. So it is really interesting to see this type of project come to fruition, I think primarily in response to one of our global competitors and some of the concerns there. We've seen all of this spending and all the enhanced or advanced product development really speeding up our timelines in the Navy as far as a lot of things going on there in response to China, and I think this is very similar in that respect. So it'll be interesting to see how everything pans out, how soon they can get it done. They want to do tests next year. I could actually see this thing in the air much sooner than anticipated because of all those different factors. I also thought it was kind of cool. Did you see some of the background on the name, why it's called the Raider?
No.
It comes from Doolittle's Raiders, which were from World War II. Not to get too far down this rabbit hole, but really interesting story if you have some time to look it up. Basically, it was the first air raid over Japan during World War II. It was about 4 months after Pearl Harbor, so it was a really important, not just a mission in terms of what it accomplished, but in terms of building up confidence that we can get back in this. We can show Japan that we're just as strong. Not all of them made it back, but most of them did accomplish their mission in getting through. It was also very unique because bombers were usually accompanied by fighter jets. They were unaccompanied. They were on their own. They had their mission. They flew off from the east of Japan right over Tokyo and kept going to China. So it's a great story, cool name, great way to honor those vets.
Did you see the comment from one reader who predicted it was the alien aircraft from Independence Day underneath that giant sheet?
I did not.
It has a similar shape. Anna, your thoughts on the new B-21 Raider?
So here, Northrop Grumman mentions its advances in digital engineering, and I think that that's a really important point. If you look at aerospace, and notably aerospace specific to military contracts, it is pretty well known for experiencing cost overruns and production delays. And it looks like Northrop Grumman is determined to move past this with the B-21 based on the design approach that it's taking. For example, the company says that it will continue to deliver an advanced degree of precision and efficiency in the build process, with production risk reduction progressing every day as B-21 test aircraft move down the actual production line. It mentions tech like digital engineering, artificial intelligence, machine learning, advanced manufacturing, and open architecture woven with lean, agile methodologies, which is a lot there, right? But I think we're probably seeing maybe a digital twin type scenario here, which has been a game changer for designers who are working on that high precision and high performance technologies and enabling them to keep those costs down. And speaking of costs, I just want to note that in June, Northrop Grumman actually surprised the Pentagon when they revealed that the B-21 Raider project was under budget, which you never hear, right?
No.
So I thought that was exciting, and I think it just speaks to the value of those cutting-edge digital engineering technologies that are really now more widely available. And so hopefully we'll see more of this really impacting timelines, cost for these key military projects.
Yeah, I just wanted to add how massive Northrop Grumman is. The company has more than 90,000 employees, more than 550 facilities in all 50 states, and more in another 25 foreign countries. It is just an incredible company doing a lot of really interesting work. It also, on the lighter side, sort of, reminded me of this meme I recently saw, where it was this guy just holding his head and it said, go to engineering school to make a better place, and then you just become another cog in the military-industrial complex. It just made me think of that, where it's like all these, because of the engineers in our family that we know, many of them wind up going to big like aerospace military contractors, stuff like that, because that's where the front end of innovation is happening. But no, really interesting stuff, and interested to kind of see it fly if they ever,
Should be soon.
Yeah. Early next year, right? Early next year?
Yep.
All right, our next most popular story. Foxconn workers put in 3 months of work per year. According to the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, workers in Mount Pleasant are assembling motherboards for Google and Amazon, but the workload is manageable. A former 38-year-old employee told the Journal Sentinel that the company has little work for employees. Workers say that for every year they're on the job, they put in about 3 months' worth of work. The employee spoke out because he believes workers at the facility are treated unfairly, reprimanded for doing nothing when they don't have anything to do. Idle workers typically sit in the break room and are told that they can go home as long as they use their PTO to take the half day. Foxconn refused to disclose the nature of its manufacturing operations, but it did say that they have experienced a slowdown related to global supply chain shortages. Last year marked the first time Foxconn qualified for state incentives since it broke ground in 2018. The company received some $30 million in Wisconsin for tax credits. Jeff, working 3 months out of the year, does that sound interesting or really, really boring? That's a lot of cribbage in the break room, man.
You could write some more poems. You would have more time for that.
I'm going to spend my entire night writing poetry for you.
Okay,
Anna.
I can't
I
wait.
could dominate any fantasy football league.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That'll be your bonus.
Maybe that's what they got people working on.
Yeah.
At the heart, I mean, it's kind of comedic, right? When you look at all this ridiculousness that's going on there in terms of what people are actually doing, but it's also at the heart of a much bigger issue is we don't know what's going on in this plant. Mm-hmm. They're not telling anybody. Foxconn is extremely vague in terms of what is actually being done, and they want these workers to be quiet about it.
Right.
They don't really want them to say, hey, they're not doing a whole lot. And David, you know much more about this. You're tied in. I read Tabek's book as well, Foxconn. But what was interesting in looking into this a little bit more, borrowing from the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel here, basically about a month ago, some people in the town of Mount Pleasant held a town meeting.
Right.
They invited everybody, the town, all of the town council, all of the different political individuals who are involved in here. The two that were, nobody came. Mm-hmm. So it was basically just the citizens there asking all these questions from Tabek and a panel of other people who are sort of tied into the economic development project. Hey, what do you think is going on here? And two of the most notable people, in my opinion, that were not there was Claude Lois and the president of Mount Pleasant, Dave DeGroot. Now, if you read Tabek's book, in my opinion, these two are at the heart of this. Now, Dave DeGroot, the village president, I think he kind of got caught up in a lot of the Trump-Walker political momentum and really threw in with them.
Yeah, he's going to ride that tide to the top.
Yeah, and this is biting them now. And so he is distancing himself from this, in my opinion. Claude Lois is like the middleman in a snake oil sales pyramid. Like, he's really good at, I didn't make the snake oil. I didn't sell the snake oil. I'm just facilitating. I'm just kind of hanging out here. It's not my fault if anything goes wrong. But he's also getting paid $200 an hour by the village right now for his consulting fees.
Sure.
Yeah, which they can't. He can't account for what he does with his time. Yeah.
Here's the bigger issue here. Okay, right now, everything associated with this Foxconn development is being paid out of a $911 million special taxing district. Okay, that's where all the bills are coming from. The village is saying we're going to be able to pay this back based on the taxes Foxconn is going to pay. Right now, okay, Foxconn at the end of 2021 was valued at $11.5 million. 11.5, not 10 billion.
Yeah.
11.5.
It was with an M.
By 2024, they were supposed to be at $1.4 billion in value, which would have led to the village of Mount Pleasant getting about $28 million in taxes.
Yeah.
Which they could then use to pay off this huge taxing district that was paying for all the infrastructure and all the loan acquisitions, all the people they basically kicked out of their house to build this huge complex. Now, if that doesn't happen, Foxconn has to pay a penalty. If Foxconn doesn't pay a penalty, guess who's screwed?
The town.
Mount Pleasant.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So when these people want to know what's going on in this building and why people are working 3 months out of the year, spending their time in the break room, this isn't about about trying to rain on somebody's easy job parade. This is about wanting to just have some transparency in what's going on with a company that last year got $30 million in tax credits.
Right.
So that's really at the heart of what's going on here, and it's still very frustrating to see all of these people in Mount Pleasant, all of these civic leaders basically going, it's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll get there. Don't worry. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's not.
On what evidence
Something
is it
weird.
fine? Yeah.
And it seems like maybe they are kicking the can down the road a little bit. One thing that I was surprised by is that Foxconn, of all the things they came out and denied, they said, oh, we're going to continue to hire. And I think that's because at the end of the day, a lot of those incentives are tied to jobs numbers. So really, they can keep collecting millions from the state. What was it, Jeff? They collected $30 million last year, and they only had 11 in
9 in taxes.
And so I don't see why Foxconn has any reason to stop doing what it's doing. It's already, I mean, it's making money just on the tax money alone. Anyway.
Yeah, it's a total scam. And it's incredible to me that Foxconn is such a bad employer globally.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew that they had a ton of problems with their workforce in China, with unhappy workers in China.
The nets.
The nets. We all know about the nets. That was widely reported. And I think the assumption, too, was that, like, Foxconn can't get away with that here, and they have to offer a certain standard of like a work environment in order to comply with U.S. regulations. But I would say that regulations don't really work well around a company culture that just sucks. I mean, we've all worked for businesses that are just bad to work for. It's sort of this nebulous thing, but people are miserable being there, and you can't like file a lawsuit about it. You just hate your life, and then people quit. And like the employee spoke out, I think, because he believes that workers are being treated unfairly, reprimanded for doing nothing when there's no work to be done. I mean, that's ridiculous. He was warned by people not to work there. And I know that the easy thing to do is say, like, why don't these people quit? There's so many jobs out there, blah, blah, blah. And while this may be true, I also believe calling out companies for just being bad employers,
being
like
bad actors.
Like, because why should these people quit and then just let Foxconn continue to do this like charade and hire more people in their place? And especially when these reports continue to pile up that reflect that this is just an entire con. Like, I don't know. It bugs me because, like, you know, you spoke to the bind that Mount Pleasant is in, and I just feel like they have very little leverage because without Foxconn paying tax revenue to them so they can pay off this TIF investment that they have, which is like $200-something million just in the next 20 years. They're screwed. They have no other way to pay that off. So they're just being held hostage, I think, by this horrible situation. So it's not like, oh, this didn't work out for the state. You know, they don't need to pay. Because I know, like, the billions and stuff that were promised were all contingent upon these massive job goals, which clearly Foxconn is not going to hit. So Wisconsin gets away with that, you know. But Mount Pleasant they're not getting out of this without just a ton of damage.
Yeah.
And they need Foxconn at this point to pay that off. So I don't know what they do.
And that's one of the things, one of the interesting things here, one of the quote-unquote penalties is Foxconn will lose the ability to expand the site. Oh no!
Right.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and they own everything. So one of the scariest things is if Foxconn doesn't develop it, who they lease it to develop under the basically lawless land that they have in Mount Pleasant, and use the 7 million gallons of water from Lake Michigan as a result. One of the things that was interesting was that the employee who did resign, he was hired at $16.50 an hour, and then recently him and a bunch of employees just randomly got a pay raise. Like, he was randomly bumped up to $20 an hour, no explanation. That just happened, maybe to keep them happier. But in this market, like $20 an hour for a manufacturing job, I mean, you might want to. We talk about quality of life, you know, a lot when it comes to your job, and even if you're making $20 an hour to sit in the break room and do nothing,
it's tempting. You kind of have to give these workers some credit for speaking out, going, "This is what's actually going on here." I mean, one guy had footage, walking around basically an empty facility, people sitting at a machine not doing anything, and being told that's what they needed to do. I got to say one thing that jumped out here too in the report that we did is the guy, he specified that people told him to run.
Yeah.
He was doing a tour on his initial tour through, hey,
his orientation.
New worker here, and then workers, they were like, run.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
what
bad.
would it take for you to want to stay there and actually go to that job?
I mean, I feel like it's already orientation, so you got to kind of be like, well, maybe it's not that bad. But
See
that
this
would
out.
be harrowing. Just
No kidding, right?
hey, how's it going? Welcome to the team, right? What are we going to do? We do softball or anything? You got to get out of here, man.
Run, dude.
Yeah.
Go.
John Dearden confesses he had a job where he once worked 73 days a year.
Sounds nice.
It was sounds like just good seasonal employment. I
Although,
bet. Did he work at like a pumpkin patch?
I have a feeling those were long days.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing.
So the company nearly missed its incentive numbers again because of the type and quality of workers that they're hiring. This company globally largely depends on interns. And these are interns that in order to graduate from college or high school have to serve a 1-year unpaid internship or longer with the company. And I think that the company thought they were going to stack bodies in this facility and just make a windfall in tax incentives.
Well, you have to figure that raise had to help them meet some of those requirements from the state as well.
Oh, certainly.
Did you see the one report? It was the year that Governor Evers actually rejected their claims. They tried to say that their company had done something in the neighborhood of $970 million in order to qualify for bigger credits. Once the state audited, they kicked it down to like 265.
Yeah,
it was,
and it was employees too. It was something like 900 employees, and it came down
level of investment,
and then it was number of employees where they went in and basically cut it in half. They said they had something like 900 employees, and it was like 450.
Yeah,
those numbers are not correct, but it was essentially half the number of people they said they had on staff, if not less.
Depending on your level of frustration you can tolerate. Again, Tabek's book, Foxconn, definitely worth a look.
Yeah, anyone interested in the interworkings of your community should read that. All right, our most popular story this week: Honda asks workers to repay miscalculated bonuses. According to Fortune, workers on Honda's Marysville factory in Ohio were awarded bonuses earlier this month. But there was a problem. According to an internal memo, the company miscalculated bonuses and told the employees to return any overpayments. Workers could pay it back up front or essentially let the company garnish future checks to make up for their mistake. Some employees will have to pay back hundreds of dollars, and they were given 9 days to respond as to how they were going to make it happen. Otherwise, the company was just going to start taking it out of their checks automatically, and now it's unclear how any of this happened. Honda said it is, quote, working quickly to minimize any potential impact to its associates. Anna, if it wants to work quickly, they should just say, our bad, and not try to get the money back.
Yeah, the impact to associates has already taken place.
Yeah, bank error in your favor.
Bank error in your favor, exactly. My initial thought when this story first broke was that there had to be a reason that Honda was doing this besides retrieving the money. Because if you look at individual overpayments, they were talking about like hundreds of dollars across hundreds of employees. What does that actually work out to for an automaker like Honda? I know they've had a tough year, but the PR backlash alone from something like this, if it breaks and gets public attention, which it did, it's just so terrible. That is not worth the money. And you not only look bad from a brand perspective, but you also look bad from employer perspective at a time when manufacturers are begging for skilled labor. So I naturally assumed that this plant was unionized and that there was some requirement that those employees be compensated uniformly.
Oh, okay.
And therefore, Honda would be in violation of some agreement with the union. Yet, my assumption was wrong. This plant is not unionized. So that leaves me a bit baffled as to why they have elected to send this memo and to try to collect this money in the first place. My only guess is that it was a decision that was maybe made locally and is now, unfortunately, being reflecting poorly upon this global auto brand that it represents. But, maybe it was issued by that plant's finance department, and they're like, oops, we need to fix this. not realizing the kind of escalating backlash that would, after that would reflect on the entire Honda brand. I don't know, but very weird. I feel like you eat that.
Yeah. God help us if there's a CFO scorned somewhere. Mike Peterson, who's watching us live, says he had this happen when he worked at FedEx. As you can imagine, when being asked to give money back, people aren't too happy.
Of course they're not.
Shocking.
Yeah,
Agreed, Mike. And actually, we have in previous companies, we've had this happen before, where people were paid bonuses, particularly on sales commission, and the deals went bad. There wound up being companies that wouldn't pay up, and as a result, there was a huge internal conflict as to, do these salespeople have to pay their commission back? And it caused a lot of internal turmoil. The company did right by kind of making good by the employees, but I would say that the entire process really damaged some of those relationships going forward. Some people were okay to bounce back from it, and others were just like, it kind of exposed them to a company that's willing to be like, kind of takes these backsies. My bad.
Yeah. No, it was handled poorly. I'm just going to echo a lot of what Anna said here. I mean, Maryville, first of all, this is sort of a legacy plant for Honda. This is one of those facilities that they looked at as, we are American manufacturing. We're in the heart of America. We're in Ohio here. We've got all these Americans working, putting out automobiles. Honda, obviously one of the biggest automakers and engine makers in the world. If you looked at every single person working at this facility, 3,900 people, let's say every single one of them was overpaid by $1,000. That's less than $4 million. You can eat that.
Yeah.
You can eat that. And again, if you look at that, it's also sort of a missed opportunity, in my opinion. If you look at what they could have said is, you know what, Honda screwed up, but they're still going to take care of their people. We made a mistake.
Don't even admit to the mistake. Be like, Employee Appreciation Week.
I would.
You guys have been crushing it lately, and we thought you all deserved a bonus. It likely won't happen again.
We increased your bonus and appreciation for everything you've done.
Yeah.
That's what we did. Whatever you want to do, they missed an opportunity here. The other reason it's a missed opportunity is you've got this weird potential locker room dynamic, right? Because they're also paying people like $5,000 signing bonuses and trying to get new people in the door.
Yeah.
There's about 100 open positions at this Maryville facility, according to Indeed. A lot of them carry this signing bonus. So let's bring somebody into the team that just got paid $5,000 to come on board, and let's mesh them with some people who had to give up the amount that's the equivalent. I think some of these folks are talking to half a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
Okay? That's not going to go well. The other thing, if you're Honda in this area, there's a handful of other suppliers, automotive suppliers right in that area. Continental, Conitech, Timco. These are all folks that are going to be looking for the similar type of talent. We know about the shortage. We know how difficult it is to find good, qualified workers. And right now, they've got a lot of options out there. This was really a bonehead move by Honda on a number of fronts.
And I will say, kind of just taking the devil's advocate side of this, if it wasn't Honda, if it was a smaller company, a smaller mid-sized manufacturer that maybe is working within way tighter margins, I understand. I understand if the company's like, hey, this was a mistake. We can't survive the next couple of months unless we kind of get this back.
True.
So I understand that there might be situations where, you can't necessarily eat this cost, but I don't think that was the case here. Yeah. Jeff, you had mentioned, it was one spouse that was interviewed saying that the bonus was the equivalent to half a mortgage payment. But we talked about a story a couple of weeks ago about how many workers and families are living paycheck to paycheck. So the money's likely already gone. They're hoping to live off of the next paycheck, which will likely be less for the next however many weeks until it's paid back. And I mean, that's not on the worker. That's not on the employees. All right. Well, before we move on to, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our website, but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor.
The most exciting and anticipated segment of the year is coming.
That's right. In September, we'll unveil the results of our 2022 Big 50 list of industrial distributors.
Our annual list ranks the top 50 industrial distributors by revenue and includes some information on the business strategies of these top companies.
In addition to this segment in our print magazine, we'll also reveal this year's ranking in our 3-part video countdown.
From September 27th to September 29th, we'll unveil this year's Big 50 companies with added commentary and analysis from our team and other industry experts.
We're super excited, and we hope you're excited too. Please join us for this year's Big 50.
You won't want to miss this.
And we're back. And for a little bit more about our sponsor, the Industrial Distribution Big 50, here's Anna Wells.
All right, the Big 50 is our annual ranking of the top 50 industrial distributors by sales revenue. This hotly anticipated list will be unveiled starting September 27th when we go live with our countdown video series, where we'll walk through the Big 50 from 50 to 1 over the course of 3 videos in 3 days. Check them out on our website starting Tuesday, inddist.com, and you will get the ranking complete with a lot of great industry analysis to go along with it. Check it out.
Thank you, Anna. Looking forward to it next week. I'm sure it's going to be a busy week for you. Or is it, now that it's done, is next week just like the victory lap?
Yeah, hard part's done. I'm going to be just like sipping cocktails at my desk.
Oh.
Yeah.
All week.
Another unsolicited plug. This stuff is awesome. And like, it's not an exaggeration. It is extremely hotly anticipated within the market. Like, people are waiting for this. So it's a lot of great info.
I was surprised by how competitive it is from company to company, just as they jockey for position on the list. I don't know. It's exciting. A lot of excitement in an industry that I wouldn't normally think was that exciting.
It's so exciting, though.
I know.
It is. It really is.
All right. Well, let's move on to, in case you missed it, the stories that maybe weren't as popular on our website, but could make a big impact on the industry going forward. Jeff, let's start with you this week. What do you got for us?
Thanks for starting with me, David, because I've got kind of what I think is going to be a bummer story. It appears to be something positive, but it's not. It's just not.
Okay.
All right. So my story is Hertz ordering up to 175,000 EVs from GM. So Hertz and General Motors announced an agreement in which the rental car company plans to order up to 175,000 Chevy, Buick, GMC, Cadillac, and Bright Drop electric vehicles over the next 5 years. In case you're not familiar, Bright Drop is like a delivery van company, okay? Here's why this bothers me.
Yeah, how is this bad?
It sounds great.
This is the same thing that these OEMs were doing about, let's see, about 14 years ago. In 2008, do you remember when they had to go to Capitol Hill and basically on hands and knees beg for a bailout because they made a lot of bad business decisions in the midst of a recession? One of the things that we had hoped they had learned from was staying away from low-margin deals like rental car companies and fleets. Now, you want to support some of these fleets. That I understand when you're dealing with, say, Pepsi. Or JBS, or some of these other big entities that need a fleet of vehicles. But rental car companies notoriously get huge orders for low margins. Now we're looking at EVs where they're already having inventory issues. They can't even get stuff onto their dealers to sell, and now they're promising this many vehicles to a rental car facility. We went down this path before. GM was one of the two companies, again, that was begging for a bailout in 2008. I was hoping that when we wouldn't see these types of headlines again, that they would have learned from some of the mistakes they made and not promising so many vehicles on low margins, and again, taking away potentially selling options from their dealerships that are getting great numbers right now. They're selling over MSRP. So why would you promise this many vehicles to this company? I don't like this deal. I hope in 5 years somebody from Chevy can get a hold of me and be like, you were wrong. You were 100% wrong. I hope I am 100% wrong. Yeah. But earmark this one, because in 3 years I think you're going to be going, GM regrets deal with rental car companies because of low margins.
Regrets.
I did not. I saw this story and I thought, what a great story. Positive. Maybe they're selling them for slightly healthier margins.
Did they say how much they were going to sell them for?
I think it was a truckload is what the quote said.
They weren't, because they're not, and these are bad deals for this company. I think this is going to blow up in their face. I don't like it at all.
Can I give you a different perspective on this?
I'd love that. If it's not wrong.
I do think that there's potential that a company like GM is using this as a marketing play as well, because it's going to get people inside EVs and driving EVs that maybe would not give them a chance otherwise. So, like, I know that people get their first experience with certain makes and models when they rent them. So maybe look at that component of it as being beneficial as well.
I mean, yes and no. I rented a Chevy Cobalt once, and that made sure that I was never going to buy a Chevy Cobalt.
Yeah, but that's a Chevy Cobalt.
I just asked for a sedan. I didn't know what was coming to me.
I guess not.
But it could go the other way.
But David, if it's you did you make a reservation or just show up at the counter?
I made a reservation.
Okay. But you made that reservation like 8 hours before you picked the vehicle up.
And did you go to the wrong rental car place?
No.
And was it in the same city that you actually...
Yes to most of those. But the 8-hour window is probably a little long. I was probably like landing at 6 a.m. in the morning on a red eye and booking the reservation on the plane.
Yeah. I can appreciate what Anna's saying. That does make sense in terms of trying to get people into these EVs and try them. But when you're only looking at 1/4 of their fleet, talking about Hertz actually being EVs, I don't know. I think people are just going to take whatever is the best deal.
Okay. Well, Anna, what do you have for in case you missed it this week?
All right, so the story I selected, the title was Drone Swarms Use 3D Printing to Build Concrete Structures. And I chose it because it used the word swarms. And all I can think about was like drones building some type of wasp's nest.
Yeah.
But then as I read the article, realized that, yes, that's kind of what it's about.
That's exactly how they're going to build it.
Yeah, so 3D printing is gaining some momentum in the construction industry. And a new approach to 3D printing, which has been led in development by a bunch of different labs and colleges globally, is using flying robots, known as drones, that perhaps you've heard of it, that use collective building materials inspired by natural builders like bees and wasps. The system is called Aerial Additive Manufacturing, or Aerial AM. And it involves a fleet of drones working together from a single blueprint. It consists of build drones, which deposit materials during flight, and quality controlling scan drones, which continually measure the build drone's output and inform their next manufacturing steps. The researchers say that in contrast to alternative methods, in-flight 3D printing unlocks doors that will lead to on-site manufacturing and building in difficult to access or dangerous locations such as post-disaster relief construction and tall buildings or infrastructure. And they actually demoed this by doing a pipeline repair, which I thought was pretty awesome. To me, it's very exciting technology, considering the ramifications, as the article said, to repair tall or inaccessible areas, difficult to reach areas. I will say that just coming back from IMTS after a 4-year hiatus, it was pretty incredible to see the advancements that were made in additive manufacturing specifically. And you're really seeing the possibilities of that technology explode. For a while, it was like wait and see, the thing that leads to the thing. Sorry. But now so much has developed in terms of its precision, repeatability, things like that. So they're looking at how additive can be used to actually on production parts, which was never a thing before, or being able to use it in aero or auto, where precision is very, very important. That stuff is getting to market ready status here. And so to see this type of application, which this is just a proof of concept, but it makes you feel like this is realistic in a short time frame. Maybe. I mean, it doesn't feel as speculative or conceptual as it would have felt to me 2 years ago reading that story. Now it feels like, wow, this could be a reality.
John Dearden says Terminator comes to mind. And this is kind of like not Terminator exactly, because we're still on the good side of the technology where we're building buildings. Terminator is when, the drones are used to build Terminators. Well, this is actually, to producer Alex's point, this is like the thing in the middle of the thing that it's led to. Like there's the thing that leads to the thing, and this is like the middle step.
Trying to avoid the catchphrase that
it's still
becomes synonymous with this podcast.
Leading
synonymous with
the thing.
One podcast host. No, but we saw drone swarm technology being used in military applications a few years ago. Yeah. And it's cool to see the next evolution of that is a drone swarm being outfitted with 3D concrete printers to create actual structures.
Yeah.
And that's incredible. The story also goes into, we've talked a lot about how if there are bases on the moon and Mars, how those are built before the planets can be colonized. And that could be drone swarms using regolith, 3D printing regolith concrete to make these habitats.
On site.
And at IMTS, they were building a Martian habitat that was 3D printed out of concrete. So it's really, when you talk about it, it's funny because when we cover this industry, when you talk to people outside of the industry about things that you see, they're like, man, I know, right, one day in the future. And you're like, no, they're doing that like right now. I mean, they were printing a home on the show floor at IMTS.
Well, I think these things are important because 3D printing and additive manufacturing, all of those, all that terminology has sort of become, I don't want to say white noise, but we just hear so much, but there's such an abundance of information out there about it that it's easy to ignore sometimes. So when you see this type of practical application here and it's actually in place, I think it just adds that much more credence and credibility and hopefully furthers the level of adoption for it because it can do incredible things.
Yeah.
Mark Waterman suggested a B-side to the catchphrase that is it's the something that leads to the something else. That's my deep impact to your Armageddon of a catchphrase. All right.
Took me a minute there, man. That's out there, dude.
Mine, in case you missed it this week, really ties in because we were just talking about IMTS, but as a team, we covered the top 10 technologies out of IMTS 2022. IMTS 2022 featured 1,272 exhibitors, and our team put together a top 10 of the companies and technology that stood out to us. So, number 10 was Stratasys with their Origin 1 printer. We're talking about mass production for end-use parts with arguably the best surface quality out of a printer. Number 9 was ABB, the GOFA CRB 1500 collaborative robot that has sensors in each joint to support close human and robot collaboration. Number 8 was Boston Dynamics. Spot, if we've talked about Spot every once in a while, the robot dog that is currently being used by the manufacturing industry to automate routine inspection tasks and capture data. Number 7 was Bantam Tools. Their desktop CNC milling machine for aluminum prototyping is the perfect piece of equipment for, quote, impatient engineers. And that thing is just cool. It is literally a desktop CNC. I mean, it's I never thought that was something I'd see. You know, I think Wazer had one a few years ago.
It wasn't like this, though.
No, this one's much more impressive. Number 6 was KUKA, the multi-robot 3D printing demonstration for orbital composites. The cell is known as Orbital S, and it's an industrial-grade robotic 3D printer that enables mass production of large end-use parts.
On the moon.
On the moon!
At the International Space Station is what I meant. But
yeah, in collaboration with the drone swarm will be these cells on the ground.
It will.
That sounds ridiculous, but that's really going to happen. Yeah. Number 5 was Okuma, which showed off 15 machines and launched a new 5-axis vertical machine. Number 4, HP, which showed off the MetalJet S100 solution. Number 3, Universal Robot, the company's UR20, made its U.S. debut. The cobot can lift 20-kilogram payloads and can tend several machines at once. Number 2 was Veo Robotics, their 3D dynamic safeguarding, which uses ceiling-mounted sensors to tell any robot when people are near, so it can stop operations and avoid injury. I thought this was really cool because it can turn any industrial robot into a cobot, and this was, we talk about really forward-thinking technology. This one was so forward-thinking that people were afraid to get in the booth because it was just a booth with a robot flailing around.
They're not ready.
Yeah, and people are like, what do you mean I just walk up to it? They're like, yeah, no, just walk up to it and you'll be fine. It'll stop. There's a sensor. And they're like, sure, it's a pass for me.
Yeah, you do it.
So they had the one guy they had to bring in. The same worker just kept walking up to it. And number 1 was Yaskawa, which had a machine-tending robot and a collaborative robot welding cell. The industry is facing a welder shortage that will leave 375,000 welding jobs unfulfilled by 2026. The problem is projected to be worse than the trucker shortage, and this is a turnkey welding table that is designed to add robotic welding capacity in any shop size, even in close proximity to human workers. The top 10 was difficult to put together because we saw a lot of incredible stuff out on the show floor, and we'll have continuing coverage of that as we go forward. I mean, spoiler, probably the 3D printed space habitat that I mentioned earlier. But I don't know, it was really fun to put together the list. And I don't know, it was nice to just be excited to go to a trade show, and Anna, to your point earlier, just see what's been cooking over the last 4 years.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, the ones that really stand out to me are the Bantam Tools, the Desk Type Pro, especially when you're looking at aluminum and all the new applications that are coming down the road for that. In fact, that it does have such a small footprint. And the Velio robotics, I didn't get a chance to go to this show, but that would be another one just in terms of worker safety. The one thing I'm wondering here, David, did you feel these were the top 10 technologies, or are you just pandering to whom you believe will be the overlords in the not so distant future?
Yeah, how scared
There's
are you?
a lot of robotics on here. Are you just kind of kissing up a little
Did
bit?
any of these robots threaten you?
There were a lot of robotics at the show. Like, I mean, you couldn't go into a booth without some sort of robotic.
Would you badmouth a robotic element or robot at this point?
I mean, absolutely. They have to remain in their place.
That's not going to go well.
Yeah,
We could do. I mean, we
put
could do.
somebody on blast. Let's
I mean,
hear it.
there were 1,200 booths there. We could do a bottom 10 too, but those aren't as nice, you know. Just like I visited their booth and they showed me their robot, and I was like, I don't think so. That looks like a toy bought many years ago.
Yeah,
Doing
Mr.
a simple
Roboto.
task. No, that robot dog's been doing backflips for about 20 years now. It's not innovative. The Bantam tools, to your point, Jeff, was really cool.
Yeah, I like that one.
Because they were talking about the impatient engineers who have to basically send their drawings out and wait weeks to get a prototype back in hand. And this is a matter of hours. So very cool. All right. Well, let's move on to our final thoughts. Anna, before we get out of here,
Yeah.
what's your final thought?
So yesterday, it turned from summer to fall rather abruptly here in
Yeah.
Wisconsin. It was like 80, and then now it's 60 for the next like 2
Yeah,
months.
just
I guess.
forever.
Yeah. And I found myself being pleased with that development, which is so weird because I used to hate fall. Because to me, it's like that's when everything dies and gets dark and cold. But now I'm all, let's light some candles and bake some muffins. I don't know if that's like after I became a mom, I'm just like super mommy about it. But
Yeah.
anyway, welcome fall.
Nothing but candles and muffins for the next 3-4 months for Anna.
Let's put on some hoodies and let's make some pumpkin
Let's
bread.
just get cozy.
Yeah, let's do it.
I was just talking to somebody about this at softball because she was adamant. It is going to be, it's like this until March or April next year. I'm like, just wait. There's going to be the week in December where it's 90 again. It's going to be 90 at least once a month until at least January. So we're going to have the hot spots, but yeah, it turned fall and just
Yeah, that just happened.
the world
overnight.
started to die around us. It was just a dramatic take on leaves.
Put it in your poem. All right, that's where you channel this energy.
Put that in your haiku.
That will be a haiku. You know, you can't just jump full bore right back into poetry. I'll start with a haiku just to get the juices flowing again.
All right, start today.
My final thought is initially an apology for saying juices flowing. And my second final thought is we had someone actually make a thing that leads to the thing shirt. And I sent it out. It was from last week. It was Matt Morris Cook, who was watching us live. Later that day, emailed us a mock-up shirt using, and you can see it on screen, Dr. Seuss and the things, and the one thing that leads to the things, which is actually kind of sexual in nature, actually, if you think about it, with the thing that leads to the things. But it's a first.
Wow.
It's a first go.
You ruined it.
It's a first go at it. But Jeff, you wanted a shirt. This is a good first iteration.
First of all, not that I didn't want a shirt, but the idea for the shirt actually did come from some readers. So
yeah, that's cool.
That's very cool. I don't know. I appreciate MMC's work here. This might take some staff dialogue to see where we want to go with this from here.
I think
not sure
we know
about this
where we
one.
want to go with it, and it's stocking stuffers.
Well, the next iteration of this, and I mean, he's a reader too. He suggested putting our faces on the things, and I believe you would be the cat in the hat.
You're making it.
Okay, so we're open
I'm not making. That's what he
more
wants.
feedback.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to
Just
say here.
we're gonna put a pin in this.
Yeah.
Eric and I have these too. Yep.
Okay, producer Eric and Alex apparently are the things on the bottom.
Needs a rooster off this shirt.
Okay, the shirt needs a rooster.
Doesn't need a rooster.
All right. So keep workshopping it. Keep workshopping it. We're looking
Thanks,
for new
Matt.
designs.
Do appreciate that.
Needs to be more sexual.
Jeff, what is your...
Don't you
final
appreciate Eric and Alex's comments that can't be heard by anybody but us?
I
Isn't that
do.
great?
I do. I'd like everyone to know that every once in a while, when it does seem like there's a very sudden and unexplained laughing, it is because something has been said behind the scenes and you can't hear it.
Yeah.
More sexual.
So, ignoring those guys, if we can, I finally came through, guys. I finally took Zach's idea and brought in some grilled pizza for you guys to try, and it's even, there's no meat concerns on there for you.
It smells amazing, and it's...
So I do need to thank Bill Kanan on our staff here. He
Bill's the best.
followed some instruction. Actually, I mean, he knew what he was doing, but told him what to do because I wanted it to be at least a little bit hot when I got in here. So he was grilling it while we were on the air. I did construct the pizza myself.
So did you make this crust from scratch, or is it?
No, I didn't do that. I did use like a store-bought crust because of like bringing it into the office. I didn't want to be kneading dough like right before we went out. So, but you can do that too. This one, it was probably it is easier with a store-bought crust. But if you look at the ingredients that are on here with the store-bought crust, it's still about the same as a frozen pizza. It's definitely cheaper than like delivery or takeout.
It is.
So how does it
better.
taste?
It tastes better than delivery and takeout. It tastes delicious.
It's like you can kind of taste the grill too, right?
You can taste the grill,
Yeah.
and I don't know what you all have for seasonings on here, but it is amazing.
Good. Glad
That's
you guys
really
like it.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, you can tell it's grilled, but I like it.
Yeah. So thanks again for the idea, Zach. Thanks, William Brent, for the other ideas for grilling. Try to get as many of those going as possible. So
That is
Glad you guys like it.
incredible.
yeah, good.
I'm like, that is legitimate shock. I had no idea it would taste this good. I'm like, oh, okay.
So it's not real complicated. You know, I did, season up some tomato or pizza sauce, spinach, tomatoes, mozzarella, red onions.
wow.
Thanks for making it veggie, Jeff. I didn't know if there was going to be like hot
That's-
dogs on the pizza. You just like...
He made a gourmet
Great
hot
idea.
hot dog pizza. This is why we need that lickable TV, because I just feel like they're missing out.
Yeah, so it turned out well. It was good.
Moving on.
Glad it worked. Anything else on the pizza? Just
No, I'm gonna
It's
keep
great.
going for it.
Yeah.
good. Eric, Alex, how's the pizza? You guys didn't like it. That's pretty rude. Anyway, going on to trivia from last week. Our question was, which of the following do you feel has the best chance to disrupt, improve, or change the current status quo within the market or operating environment? Options were Bezos and Blue Origin, privatizing launches and space travel. We talked about U-Boat Works and their personal subs. Wolfspeed in North Carolina breaking ground on a new silicon carbide chip plant. The NTSB cracking down on bad pipes and energy infrastructure, or the railway union deals. Wanted to share some of the thoughts that we had from the polling question that people provided. Excuse me. So the first one was from Carl. He wrote in and said, anything that can be done to improve our infrastructure is very important. The existing pipe was installed in 1957 and with the technology of the day lasted approximately 65 years. With our technology now, that pipe might last 165 years. So great point there in looking at the what the NTSB did in cracking down on Enbridge and the pipe explosion. Another great comment from Chris here, or actually I just kind of like this one. His option was the railway union deals. That's what he picked for the polling question. But Anna, he said he's all in on the sub. He thought
All
that was pretty
in?
cool. Chris Walsh was in on the sub, and I'm with you there, Chris.
He wants a sub in his driveway.
Absolutely. And finally, wrapping up, heard from Ralph here. He also talked about Wolfspeed in North Carolina. He said, we're all aware of the slow shutdowns caused by the chip shortages. This story has an impact on that situation, but also the future growth of electronics as a whole, wherever they might be found. So in other words, David, it's not just the thing.
Oh, God.
It's the thing that leads to the thing.
I'm going to keep on this pizza.
Well done, Ralph. So those were some great feedback from our readers, from our listeners. And when looking at the polling question as a whole, it wasn't that close. Everybody did go with the Wolfspeed in North Carolina and the silicon carbide chip plant as far as the most impactful option of those.
That makes sense.
It was the other one that did get a lot of dialogue, had a lot of dialogue about it, was the NTSB cracking down on the bad pipes. A lot of people kind of shared our thoughts in terms of there needs to be more accountability there. If it's NTSB or somebody else, we do need that. So thanks again for all the feedback, folks. And the one thing that I always forget to mention is this polling question is on the webpage. If you go to our site where the podcast is listed, it's there. If you want to submit right there, submit your thoughts. That'd be great.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Moving ahead for next week, or for this week's question, is which of the following is having the biggest impact on manufacturing's ability to grow? Again, looking at some of the stuff we just talked about. the development of scalable, renewable energy options, data retention and security, defense projects requiring quicker development times, stakeholder visibility on tax credits for manufacturing expansion, or worker retention recruitment strategies. So again, we're looking at which one of these is going to have the biggest impact on this industry's ability to grow. We talked about renewable with sort of hydrogen versus electric vehicles, data security, that's one of the things we brought up potentially for the floppy disks, defense projects with the B-21 Raider, stakeholder visibility on tax credits and all the mess that Foxconn has sort of created there, and then worker retention and recruitment strategies relating to sort of the Honda story on the bonuses. So
Okay.
Let us know. Appreciate all the feedback we've gotten thus far.
Well, and Jeff, to your point, if you go to in.com or manufacturing.net on the podcast post, you can find the survey or the question at the bottom of the post.
Yeah, and it's linked right to the SurveyMonkey where we capture all that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Excellent. Anna, any early thoughts on, how well Jeff tosses a pie or the biggest impact on manufacturers' ability to grow?
No, I'm a big fan of this pizza. I don't want to eat it into the microphone, so I'm going to eat it in the corner afterwards.
I got more than 3/4 of the way through the piece before I backed away from the mic. So I apologize. I apologize to audio producers and viewers and listeners. I mean, unless you're into the little, the chewing ASMR, then, for that niche, I'm there for you. But Jeff, thanks again for bringing this in. That was incredible.
Yes, it's awesome.
All right, well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. You can email the podcast, reaching us at Jeff, David, or Anna at in.com, and you can subscribe to our newsletters to make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first. For Jeff and Anna, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we'll see you next week.